All right, everyone. We are going to be going over the suicide protocol, suicide, suicidality, and suicide risk protocol today. Just a brief overview. Last time we talked about the Columbia scale and basically the severity rating scale as it pertains to how we determine what level of risk somebody has based on their suicidality. And we said that we're really implementing a safety plan only when we have confirmed that the client has suicidal intent. Even if there's no specific plan, they say there's active suicidal thoughts. There is some intent to act on it, right? Like it's not, it's a, it's, this happens when a client is not assuring you, like, well, I have some thoughts, but I definitely wouldn't do it. Or like, I really would never go there and I don't see myself going there. I do have the thoughts, or maybe I sometimes wish that I just would go to sleep and never woke up, which count as ideation without intent. Um, and even if there's like a method that they imagine, which is not the same as a plan or intent to act on that, right? Like the method is kind of imagined or it comes up in it's somewhat of an intrusive way, like, oh my God, they imagine themselves um, cutting their wrists or jumping in front of a train or like looking out the window and the thought crossed their mind that they could jump. This does not necessarily count as a plan, right? It's a method, it's a ideation that would put them in the moderate risk category of the Columbia Suicide Severity Scale. But when there's an actual plan, um, there's an actual plan of, thinking about the details. Tinanella, you have your hand up. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, just to clarify real quick. So, because the way that I've done it before is like if somebody has had like increased like thoughts about it, but not necessarily like having a plan, you're saying that only if they have a plan, not necessarily if they're having like a lot of these kinds of thoughts.
Right. So yeah, the way that in the way that this protocol is designed is to really engage on the safety plan when they are at high risk. Um, and not necessarily, right? If there is no intent, if they say, I do not intend to do this, I have no intent to do this, I don't think, like the thoughts come into my mind, but I don't think I'm going to do this, and so on. We're going to approach this more with essentially they're telling you there is enough protective factors that a suicide safety plan is not technically required at this point. um, the safety plan would get triggered. I mean, this is not to say you're not documenting this in your notes and you're not making sure you're addressing it and asking about it and checking in and how is this going on and having it in your purview, right? You want to make sure that you're documenting everything, even suicidal ideation, the very first level of this, which is the wish to be dead question, right? Or go to sleep and never wake up. Um, Even if the actual thoughts that are more concrete of like I actually had a thought that I could kill myself that are associated with some sort of method, um, that you're going to notate, you're going to document everything. And the suicide safety plan really is going to be triggered when there is intent. When they say, well, even if there's an element, when you ask, have you had these thoughts and had some intention of acting on them? And if they say, well, I'm not sure, maybe they're ambivalent about it, not 100%, but maybe a little bit sometimes. That's when you puts the person at a higher risk, and we're doing the safety plan where we're saying we're contracting. You're not going to do this. Does this make sense? That's what the safety plan really is. It's a contract that we're doing with the client, with steps and so on, which we're going to go through this. So let me share my screen with what the actual um, Now, again, I cannot emphasize this enough. I'm actually going to show you the protocol first. Um, I really do encourage all of you to please look at it, at the suicidality protocol. Um, you can, let me see here, share. So there's the risk assessment is basically just using the Columbia scale that we looked at last time to sort of keep an eye of whether your client is low risk, moderate risk, or high risk. We said that a client is low risk when they have suicidal ideation or vague thoughts about wanting to be dead, but do not have um, necessarily a method or a plan. We get to moderate risk when there's a method, and we get to high risk when there's intent or a plan. Does this make sense? So this is just gonna this is gonna give you a very detailed plan of what to do, how do you assess, it's really, you know, encouraging you all to pay attention to statements that maybe allude to suicidal ideation, feeling hopeless, nothing matters, I'm not sure what the point of this is anymore, everything is meaningless. I think about not waking up. It would be easier if I wasn't here anymore. A part of me wants to die, doesn't want to live. Violence says about ending it all, right? We're documenting. Notice that every single point in this document says document information that you obtain in your clinical notes. Um, go through this, right? We were exploring their thoughts and ideation more. I'm going to go through the IFS way of doing this, which is really inviting the client to bring some of this up. But generally speaking, we're being compassionate, non-judgmental, non-reactive. You can acknowledge that the questions may be uncomfortable. You know, you can note your care for them and intend to collaborate. What I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to help you so that this doesn't get worse. Um, is it okay if we talk about this a little bit more? Um, there's any fears? There oftentimes clients are afraid that if they talk about this stuff with a therapist, they're going to be hospitalized for expressing ideation, or even if they're going to be hospitalized for expressing intent, like right away. And we want to assure them that's not necessarily the case. Um, anyways, I encourage you guys to look through this whole document. Like, just take some time to read this through. I'm not going to go through this entirely, but I want to encourage everybody to please do this. Now, it's interesting because there's steps on what to do after, after safety plan, right? Like, what happens after safety planning? What happens when there's imminent risk and contacting emergency services, how to do that. It tells you what to do when emergency services are contacted. It tells you what to do when a client is discharged. Now, this is something that I hope that none of you experience, having to engage to this level of action. Cinderella or anybody that's licensed here or not, has anybody present here has had to hospitalize a client before? Okay, you can raise your hand and potentially share. This is something that is not something that, thank goodness, I have never had to do before, but it gives you the steps so you all know what to do in the event. Of course, if something like this happens, you're under supervision and stuff like that, reach out to your supervisor, reach out to me in addition. You don't need to go through this alone with your client. But we are asking, this will be a good segue, right? If you do notice that a client goes from, I'm going to share the suicide safety plan now. If a client does go from, I have passive thoughts, but really maybe there's a method, but there's no plan, there's no specifics, and there's no intent. Like, I don't think that I'm going to do this. I don't want to do this. Um, and you could explore this with the client. Like, what do you say you don't want to do it? Like, what's stopping you from doing it? Like, maybe the thought is there, the when you engage with it, why wouldn't you do it? Like, and you try to get an idea of what are some of the protective factors for the client. Um, you want to document all of this. Um, okay, where's the safety plan here? So if it does happen that somebody says, well, kind of, I could do it. Like I could do it and I'm scared and I just, there's intent that's present. Then we're gonna go to the safety plan, which is here. And I'm gonna share my screen now. Okay, can everybody see this? Okay, great. So the safety plan, as we said, is essentially a contract that you're making with the client, and a very concrete plan in which you are identifying, obviously, all the contact information of the client, which you will have from your intake form or, yes, the documentation we have. We are going to be identifying um, triggers and stressors, any situations that tend to throw us off. You're engaging with the client to really think about this and to put that down into writing, right? Behaviors, situations, and circumstances that put you at an emotional risk. Identify those stressors and triggers. Identify the warning signs, right? These are thoughts, images, mood, situations, behaviors that present when a crisis may be developing. You're inviting them to become aware and to name them and write them down. These are the things that I know are happening when I feel like maybe a crisis is actually developing. We're going to notice and we're going to notate the coping strategies. These are things I can do to take my mind off of things without contacting another person, right? These are some coping strategies you might have um, identified uh, during your treatment so far. Might be box breathing. It might be listening to music. It might be going to a public space, for example, for one of my clients that was really important, like being in public, going to a cafe, surrounding themselves with people that help them. Um, and you're also going to name people and social settings that provide a distraction, right? That are going to help them just take their mind off of things. Somebody that's going to, yeah, settings that might be going to, again, a specific place. We're going to name the person. We're going to put their phone. We're going to name the place, right? This is very intentional, very concrete. We're also going to identify people whom they can ask for help, specifically people that can be helpful, not just a distraction, but folks that could be helpful. Now, you might be thinking, well, what if my client has such a decreased network of support that they can't think of anyone to put in here? Like, we're going to try to get at least one person in there. Hopefully, they'll have one person. But of course, you're also going to add the professionals and agencies that you can contact during a crisis. That's where your name is going to go, your phone number. That is a phone number that you can be reached out by this client. This is important. Um, you can have either a burner phone or a different phone. I give my clients my cell phone. If they need to reach me, they can reach me at any time. They text me and so on. I tend to, that's a whole other conversation about how to keep boundaries and make sure that it's only limited to scheduling and emergencies and things like this. Um, it's also important to note here that when one of your clients is at high risk for suicide, meaning we've already determined through the assessment that they have intent, maybe they have a plan, there's been a method that has been maybe they don't have a plan yet, but they do have intent. And it's really, especially if they do have a plan and intent, so on, I like to recommend to broaden the support that the client is getting and potentially to get medication management involved. So I might refer a client that is struggling to this level to also have um, a psychiatrist in their care or an additional either support group or more people so that you're not the only person that this person is seeing. You're not the sole therapist. The person is coming to you. This is outpatient work, right? We're a private practice. But we want to increase the level of care that this person is getting, especially if they're at high risk for suicide. Does this make sense, everybody? I'm not a trigger happy therapist that is going to totally recommend them to go see a psychiatrist in the first session when they're disturbed with their symptoms. But if somebody is really struggling and they're at high risk of suicide, I will recommend maybe to see a psychiatrist, right? And I will explore it compassionately and gently and respecting their protectors that might be worried about taking meds and stuff like that. But, you know, I might, I will uh, refer them and say, you should get an assessment from this. And maybe you could have a little bit of a pedal assist, like electric bikes, help you get over the bridge just to give you a little bit of a zip up this hill. Cinderella, go right ahead.
Thank you. So do we provide crisis like management outside of work hours?
We do.
Okay.
We do. This is time, of course, that you will be billing for.
Okay.
And it's only for a crisis, right? Like this is a
Hmm.
life threatening, you have active suicide. What happens, for example, is if I have clients that really, really are struggling, they have my cell phone, but they might reach over email and they might say, I'm having a really, really hard time. They might just reach out, kind of like they reach out to a friend and they might text me or email me a whole paragraph or a bunch of paragraphs about
Hmm.
how difficult their situation currently is. Instead of engaging with the text and doing a back and forth, giving them advice, reminding them about something, I'm not going to engage in any clinical content
Hmm.
through phone or email. I will say we should schedule an emergency session, and I will give them times that I'm available right away.
I see.
So that
Okay.
might be in the evening that night or in the very early in the morning. And I might say, this is my next session available. Let's schedule a session if you need
Got
to
it.
process this. Does that make sense? That's how I'm available. Now, I will also
Understood.
say if there's something that's life threatening, and this is on my voicemail, if you call my number, my voicemail says, you've reached the confidential voicemail of Juan Robles Gil. If you're having a life threatening emergency, call 911.
Hmm.
Um, and I might remind them, of course, use your clinical judgment for this. For my clients that have been working for many years, I don't give them that. If you're having an emergency, call 911, unless they're having like an emergency where I need to, kind of tell them they kind of implicitly know.
Gotcha.
Um, but does that make sense, Cinderella? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. So it's not necessarily providing like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, it's not necessarily providing like crisis, what's the word? Just like help in crisis, but just kind of basically getting them set up to come in as soon as possible, not
Yes,
necessarily guiding them through whatever they're going through.
that's right. That's right. Now,
Got
if
it. Okay.
somebody is, I have had many sessions in which a person has told me, I need to talk to you as soon as possible. Please, can you fit me in? I don't know what to do. I'm in this situation
Hmm.
and I have no idea what's going on. Again, if it doesn't require a first responder, if it doesn't like, is this a life-threatening emergency? Like, I might be unavailable. And my clients know this, by the way. This is part of the informed consent. I go camping at times. I don't look at my phone. I'm not available.
Hmm.
I'm in a place where there's no cell phone signal. And we all have lives. We don't want to be, but we have the responsibility to kind of look into our phones. If somebody reaches out to me, I might, you know, use my clinical judgment and say, okay, I might need to get into a phone call with this person right now and just answer
Hmm.
and see what's going on. I might do a really quick assessment and ask them to schedule a session. I've had, unfortunately, with some clients where they're really not having an emergency and they called my phone a couple of times, people that have been hospitalized many times, and I got really scared and I had to tell them, like, you can't just do this and call me
Right.
unless. So it's a little bit nuanced and it could
Mhm.
potentially happen. Like, I want to be available, but really upholding boundaries. Does this make sense? So
Yes.
it depends
Um,
on each of you, how you're,
sure.
yeah, go ahead.
So I was just gonna say, because I mean, obviously, like people have called my like after or my work phone after hours and stuff like that. And so what I've done in the past when I've given a safety plan is instead of like where it says the clinician name for the professional contacts, I put the
Mhm.
suicide hotline. Would you recommend doing that, or would you prefer for us to put our contact there?
Well, I will, yeah. I see there's other hands too, and we're going to provide all of the contacts during a crisis. This doesn't mean we're going to do the crisis management ourselves,
Okay.
right? If we're working with a client who's a high risk for suicide and they have, you're going to see in the plan, we're going to contract for them to contact everyone that they possibly can to prevent this crisis. That includes the suicide ideations, right? If you can see, I'll go to your question, Maya, and I'm just gonna, we're about to end this, so we'll go to questions in 1 second. Um, you see that after the clinician name and the phone, and again, emphasizing that you want to increase the level of care, refer to a psychiatrist, refer to a group, have
Hmm.
other networks, right? Where you're not the only one there. You're going to try to help them also determine how to make the environment safe. These are actions that will help me make the environment safe, that reduces imminent danger. I'm gonna hide the scissors or give them to somebody else. I'm not gonna have the stuff around. I'll go to a public place. Very intentional. This is the key piece. If I begin to have have suicidal ideations that begin to spiral into a crisis with intent and so on, it's important I not be alone, even if means being with somebody. I will take the following actions, right? So I'm going to call my friends first. I'm going to try to de-escalate that way. I'm going to call the people that can help me. I'm going to try to de-escalate that way. I'm going to call the clinicians, or I'm going to reach out to book a session. Really, this is what this means. I'm going to reach out. I'm going to say that I'm in a crisis. I'm going to try to find a session as soon as possible with
Hmm.
my providers. If none of that is helping, and that includes if my provider is not available, if my therapist did not answer the phone, if my friends are busy, if nobody answered, right? Like we are going to call the suicide hotline. And if that doesn't help, so I'm going to call the hotline, I'm going to text the crisis line, I'm going to talk to somebody that specializes in this. If that doesn't help and I still want to kill myself, I'm going to call 911 or go to the nearest emergency room. That's what this plan really is saying. I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to call the suicide hotlines if that doesn't help. And if that doesn't help, I'm going to call 911 or go to the nearest emergency room.
Gotcha.
This is all of the risk factors you can look at, right? And the protective factors. You can also signal those in your plan. And this is important. And we'll go to questions in a second. This is the last paragraph, right? Like I have developed and agreed with this individualized safety plan. I agree that I will not physically harm myself in any way, including attempting suicide while in treatment at IDC. I acknowledge that I've been advised that should I feel in danger of harming myself, I will utilize one or more of the following options above. I also understand that my therapist may have to break confidentiality by reaching out to my emergency contact if necessary. The patient name and their signature. You're going to put the date. And then you're going to share this with the patient. Okay. And you're going to ask for permission to share it with their emergency contact also. So anybody that was named on the person that I'm going to help, right? The 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 client is going to be sharing this. You are not sharing this with the emergency contact. The client needs to share it themselves just for HIPAA reasons, right? If the client is the one who shared it, you don't need to get a consent form and get it signed and make this process more complicated. You're going to ask them, hey, send it to your wife and CC me, please, on this. Email it to your emergency contact or whomever. Um, and you're gonna the note to others, right, is basically saying do not call the police or 911 if I call you and I tell you that I want to kill myself, right? You're not doing that. In most cases, I'll likely just need somebody to keep me company and over the phone in the unlikely event that I'm thinking about attempting suicide and I can't get through a therapist or the suicide hotline. I may need to leave my apartment, go somewhere else. If you're local, stay on the phone with me. If you're in a different state, etc. Okay, this makes it very clear for people that are helping. to not potentially escalate the situation. Notice it puts the onus of responsibility on the client if they're not with you, right, to call the emergency services. This is a safety plan. It's not a guarantee the person is not going to kill themselves, but it is a contract that they're signing to do this. Okay. All right. Any questions, comments? Maya, you had your hand up, and we're going to go with Anaya. Go ahead.
I just realized that I don't have your phone number. Um, do you
Okay.
mind sending it out to all of us? I mean, just in case of an emergency,
Yes.
like
Yes.
this. And I mean,
Yes.
I have your email, obviously, but I
Yes.
don't have your
Yes.
phone number.
Yes. You can all
And
save my phone number. I'm going to put it in the chat.
Austin. Um, and thank you for that. So you recommend 988 before 911, just to be clear, or the other suicide hotlines.
We're trying to de-escalate. Yes.
Yeah. Um, and I'm just trying to think of the logistics of this. Like, say we're on Zoom and say a
Mhm.
client is expressing these ideations and say we need to do this safety plan.
Mhm.
I'm gonna like, okay, I'm gonna email you this plan and I'm gonna fill it out for them. Like they're gonna fill it out on their computer.
You're gonna fill it out for them.
I'm
You're
gonna
gonna
fill it
pull
out.
the, yes.
Okay.
So just to be clear, wherever
Okay.
you are, that you, if you are in person, we should probably have some of these printed out actually in each of the therapy rooms, which by the way, we have a new office. We're not gonna sidetrack on this, but um, you are gonna bring it up. And if you have to do this digitally or so on, you can do this with the client present. You're gonna type it up and you're gonna send it to the client and a signature, they have to print in whatever it is. They can just reply to the email, say, and I agree to this FT plan over email
Mhm.
once you've sent that to them.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I agree.
Yeah.
That can count as having received it.
Okay.
Cinderella did share a really good resource, which is a safety plan. I'm going to put this in here in the chat. Where is this? Where is this? Where is this? Where is this? My safety plan here. Um, Give me 1 second. This is a really cool resource that Cinderella shared. That's basically, and you can immediately get, oh my goodness, where is this? You can immediately create a safety plan there on the go with a person
Oh yeah, the app, right?
through it's online. It's collaborative. You make it with them. It's very simple. It has the bulk of what I just talked about. It's missing some pieces, and like more explicitly, the contract language and stuff like that. You can make this, and then also, like if you're short on time and obviously, if something like this happens, this counts as an emergency and you have to cancel your sessions and until you complete the safety plan and then you end. And you can bill for that extra time, by the way, right? If you're doing an extra long session, you do a double session or stuff like that, just let me know, let Lauren know, let the client know. Um, but you're staying with them until the end. Um, does that answer your question, Maya?
Yeah, I'm just thinking of like these moments are so intense, right? And I'm just
Mhm.
like, and by the way, let me just, like putz around on, like some, oh, I need to sign it. Like, oh, Adobe won't let me. Oh, I need to, like this just trivial bullshit. And then just like a really intense moment. I could just imagine that hampering, or
Mhm.
exasperating the process. And so just to be clear on like
Yeah,
who's,
my suggestion is you pull it up on your computer on a Google document, you fill it out.
okay. And
Um,
then, and I'm
and
not allowed to email to their contacts, but I am
no,
allowed to break confidentiality in these extenuating circumstances. I'm a little confused.
you do not break confidentiality unless there's imminent risk of death or suicide. A safety plan is not imminent risk of death or suicide.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Is this clear?
Yeah.
You do not break confidentiality or engage that most high level of
Hmm.
of mobilization unless the client is telling you, I am going to kill myself with this
Yeah.
method, this time of day, I've handed the notes, I'm going to do it. So we really
Yeah.
want to emphasize that this safety planning, it's a little scary. Um,
Yeah.
it's, you know, certainly difficult conversations to have with someone, but it's what the title of the plan is, right? We're just trying to contract and to prevent this from happening. And we're saying these are the things we're
Mm.
going to do. Okay. Um,
Yeah.
I'm going to go to Anaya really quick, Maya, and if you have more
Sure.
questions, we can
Yeah, yeah,
loop
no, it's
back
fine.
in.
It's fine.
Anaya,
No problem.
go ahead.
Yes. Hi.
Hi.
I'm just curious if I don't know. So, say a client has they're having a lot more suicidal ideation, and they want to meet more frequently. Like instead of once a week, they want to meet twice a week.
Yes.
Would that be a conversation that I would have with you or Lauren first, or would I just okay.
Yes. That is basically increasing the level of care. You're going to notate that on your notes, update your treatment plan. I mean, if you want to do it really strictly by insurance purposes, right? You're updating your insurance, your treatment plan, say, um, you know, recommend increasing the level of care this person is receiving to twice a week. And you don't need to tell Lauren or me or anything like that. Insurances will give us a lot of problems when we go past twice per week. So if you have to do more than 2 sessions per week, that is when, you let us know. And that is when maybe the client is needing an even higher level of care, like an intensive outpatient or a group or somebody else, because insurance is going to be like, wait, 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 what's going on? This person's going to outpatient 3 times a week, 4 times a week with this therapist. We're not covering this because we could be covering an intensive outpatient 2 times a week, totally fine. And of course, if a client is having a crisis and they need to meet 3 times a week, 1 week of the year, that's fine. That's not something we can sustain. Otherwise, you're gonna get audited, and the insurance company is gonna be all up your notes and be like, "Why are you doing this? And why have you not referred?" Notice you're notating everything on your notes, right? Like, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm managing, conducted a safety plan. Um, you know, I've shared it, client shared it with emergency contact, every single step of the way you're documenting.
Okay.
Sinanella, does that answer your question, Anaya?
Yes, yes. Thank you so much.
Okay,
Yeah.
of course. Go ahead.
I'll be quick because I know I've been talking a lot today, but
No, you're good. You're good.
so I want to just kind of like touch on what Maya was saying, and I kind of want your feedback on this too. So the safety
Yes.
plan that you shared that I had shared with you, so that one is not, like you said, not as like intense as the contract is. So earlier when I asked about like, if people are having like increased ideation, would you recommend, I mean, at least is the way that I've done it is like when I've heard somebody say that they've had like more increased ideation, not necessarily like a plan, I like automatically put them on a safety plan. And the reason why I like the one that I sent is because it gets sent to their phone immediately. So if Maya's worried about like, getting too caught up in like the moment and not being able to
Mm-hmm.
document everything, how would you feel if like, utilizing that like other safety plan is just
Yes.
kind of like a just in case thing? So then
Yes.
should anybody need to go into the contract that you guys can like obviously like you have something so it's not as like jarring when it happens the first time.
Yes. That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, the short answer of that is yes. I mean, you can put them on a safety plan whenever you want to, right? Whether it's clinically going to be relevant to the case and how the client system is going to take that. And this whole other deeper layer is, part of the clinical conversation. You can. You're also noticing your parts as a therapist, how comfortable you are with suicidality, how worried you are. And if you think you want to put a client on a safety plan when they're at moderate risk, meaning, um, I personally wouldn't put a client on a safety plan on low risk, meaning they have ideation that they're very strongly saying this is not something I would do or something like that. Otherwise, I'm probably going to be exiling the part that's suicidal a little bit. But let's say that like you want to put them in a safety plan when they're moderate risk, like they do have thoughts of killing themselves, even though they say they don't have intent, but they do have those thoughts, and it is increasing, and they're saying they don't want to do it, but it's increasing. And you want to go ahead, you can do the safety plan that I shared with you, the practices one. If you feel pressed for time and you don't want to deal, as Maya said, with the bullshit or like getting lost in the paperwork, whatever it is, you can certainly use the one that you shared. I'm going to share my screen right now so you guys can see this. If you click on the link that Cinderella shared, it's a very easy to make plan. And you basically just click on the thing. You see this is the warning signs. So what are the warning signs? You're asking the client, right, to fill them up, right? Cinderella, this is kind of how you do it.
Hmm.
Um, and then you're going to go to next, coping strategies, next, distractions, right? This kind of like helps you add more distractions. My supports, who are the people that I can reach out to, who can I call? My professional supports, that would be us, other professional care. Okay. Safer environment. What are the things that I can do to make my environment more safe? And then you review it, and then you basically send it to their phone number or their email. And that's it. It's done. Like they receive it. It you also I'm imagining you also get a copy of that, Cinderella, or do they just have it and you
Hmm.
just document?
They're
You
the
don't
ones
get
that have it.
you don't have a copy of it, so they get it only. Okay.
Hmm.
So that's fine. They have to give you permission, right, to send this. It's fine. I would probably do email over phone because phone is a little bit more accessible to more people, and they might see, oh my God, you have a safety plan? Like, I can't believe you're now wanting to kill yourself. It could
Mm.
it could make a problem with couples, in particular people that have their phone is used by whatever. So email probably would be my preferred way of sending it to them. And I don't know if it would send it to two emails. Have you tried doing this in Anilla? If you do comma
I
and
haven't done the two emails, but I've done email or phone. So like I guess if we need to have a copy, if we need
yes,
to make one of these for them, like we can email or text
yes,
it to like ourselves and them.
yes,
So
yes, yes.
yeah.
This is a very quick one. It's very easy. I mean, you can download it actually here for yourself,
Yeah, right.
actually.
Yeah.
You can download it. So I guess you send it to them and you document that you did a safety plan. This is like a more express version of it. I would like you guys to find the time to do the other one too. I mean, you're going to be using a lot of that information already. You fill it out for them, and then you send them the practices one to have for our records, right? Does this make sense? You're identifying protective factors, risk factors. It gives
Mhm.
us uh, you're gonna have this in the chart. If anything happens, they have it, you have it. It's very exhaustive, the one that I made. So, and again, I only use it for people that are high risk. Does that make sense? That's why it's a
Mhm.
little more intense.
Which makes sense. Yeah.
Um, Anyways, but this is a great resource. I don't have any problem with you guys using it at all. If you need to do it, absolutely, that's really helpful.
Cool. Thank
Um,
you.
Carolyn,
Hi.
hey,
Um, I just wanted to offer that I went through a safety plan with a client a few weeks ago, and that was an in-person client who I've had a longer relationship with, and we have talked about suicide previously as well. But I printed out a copy for myself and I printed out a copy for the client, and then we went through it at the same time. And I thought that I knew a lot of things about how this person was like had suicidal ideation in their mind, but it was a really good jumping off point to talk about some facets of it that we hadn't really discussed before, really getting into the details of like what the triggers might have been or what possible risk factors might be. And I felt at the end of the session, we both felt good that there was a plan and also felt like we had been able to successfully explore more what was going on. And I just wanted to throw that out there, that I think it's useful on multiple levels.
thank you so much for sharing that, Carolyn. Yeah, I have found when I do this for my more, even for more anxious clients who are worried that they're going to kill themselves, like that might be more intrusive even earlier on. Something about having it contracted soothes some of the protectors that don't want to do this, like they're entering into a contract and they're sharing it with another person. It feels like there's a little bit more of a life affirming energy behind this contract, that we're saying we're going to do everything in our power to prevent this from happening. Um, and this is a good segue. And if anybody has any other questions, please go ahead. But it's a good segue to talk about how to essentially what this looks like ongoing to be working with an actively suicidal client. And the safety plan is just the first contract that you're going to make. Again, it could be the one Sunila shared. Then you can do the practices one, or you can just do the practices one if you want. Um, um, Good idea to have it handy. I have it like in my desktop. I have like the forms that I tend to use, assessment stuff like that. It's very handy. If you see people in person, print them, have them in a little document. Um, this could be something I might ask some of our beloved interns to help me with as we move to the new office, to maybe help me organize some of that stuff and have some of these documents handy. But yeah, it can be very symbolically helpful to contract, particularly again, jumping into the IFS framework again, to help the parts of them that really are scared of this or that do not want to do this, to feel like there's more, I guess, protection from this other scary part that just wants to die, you know? Um, and one of the other things that I shared with you guys, I'm going to share this document with you right now, and we'll go over this. But um, before I open it up, essentially, when this comes up with folks, you can literally say something along the lines of, again, you do not need to be trained in IFS to do this. You do not have to have gone to the IFS Institute trainings or have a big IFS framework for this. Essentially, you're inviting curiosity and compassion by letting the client know, like, oh, when the way that I work with suicide and suicidality is that I have this framework, understanding that it doesn't need to be all of you, but like I think of it as it being a part of you that is thinking about this and that might have that as a solution, or is wanting to do this for a particularly benign response. And I invite those parts into my session room to be able to get to know what's going on for them and have a relationship with them, not in an effort to strengthen them or embolden them and validate them to the degree of like you know to validate that this is what you ultimately want. Like, I'm here to help you certainly live the longest and the most satisfying life that you can live. But we welcome the parts of you that might want to die. And I kind of conceptualize it in that way, that this is a part of you, even though you might have other parts that really want to keep going. And I allow that to exist in the room and invite you to try to connect with the part of you that might want to die. So I welcome those conversations, right? So essentially, and Anna, I know that you had said this in the previous meeting. I think you had shared how for a lot of clients that do have suicidal ideation, conceptualizing this as parts can be really helpful to sort of talk about it and talk about what's going on for them. Do you want to share a little bit of what your experience was with that, Anna? Sorry to put you on the spot, but
No, it's okay. Yeah, I think that it was helpful. I think in our supervision, we had talked about that, um, like the therapist part of me that was worried about the suicidal part of this client. resonating with the part of the client that was also scared of it. And so I think that zooming out and talking with the client of how this part of them was working to protect them and stop them from feeling pain and shifting that view that it was something trying to help them, I think helped the client feel less afraid and scared. And so it felt more accessible to talk about in the space. And yeah, they really appreciated being able to shift that view of it.
Did it
Mm-hmm.
help them have more compassion for that part, you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think it helped them have more compassion. Um, I think the like unsafety within themselves and uncertainty was really big as well. And so um, seeing this part as protective rather than more like destructive was helpful.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, really the basic structural thing that happens when you introduce parts language with the context of suicidality is that you separate the person from the suicidal thoughts. Um, you're trying to say you are not just the suicidal thoughts. It's very basically acknowledging that this is a part of you that is having these thoughts and that is having these desires, and it doesn't necessarily represent the whole of you or what you have become. Um, so that invites curiosity and compassion to engage with it at a distance, which in IFS terms really is unblending. That's what we call unblending. And in cognitive behavioral therapy, we're talking about distancing yourself from the thoughts, right? I am having the thought that I want to kill myself. That is a thought. It is not me. Now, within the IFS language, we're saying this is the unblending process in which we are asking the part to step in front of us, step aside of us, step to the side so we, our more essential, wiser self, can have a relationship with this part of us and actually engage with it. Um, so here's a little guide. I think I shared this with you all, but just briefly, because we have 5 minutes left, I'll share with you this document. And again, I invite you to look at this so that you can have this as a part of your own process, right? It's really easy. It has a little overview of IFS and the kinds of parts that we usually encounter. Um, and you'll see that, again, approach separates the person from the part of them that has a suicidal thought. Using basic parts-based approach can be integrated into your assessment of suicidal risk and safety planning. Think of this as a gentle and compassionate way to engage and collaborate with your client about their suicidality. This does not replace the suicide risk assessment protocol. The suicidal parts are typically protective and trying to help cope with or manage internal pain, hopeless sense of no control or helplessness. They can be proactive or reactive. They can be intrusive and unwanted. There's an invitation. This is important to check in with yourself, to notice what parts within your own internal world become activated about suicidality. Are you anxious and fearful? Are you kind of seeking control? Are you detached and avoidant? You know, this is stuff that you can work on in supervision and take steps for you to unblend from your own parts that are either anxious or fearful or managerial and seeking sense of control or detached. I mean, this entire meeting we've talked about the suicide safety plan, and that is as a therapist part that's exercising managerial contracting and control with the client, right? We understand this. And we do this because it's the law and because we are abiding by ethical practices in the state of New York and all that stuff. We're doing this to follow the law in New York State. So it is more managerial. It's doing everything that we can. So we're letting that part kind of blend, and we're going to do what we can as a therapist to create these safety plans. But then we also, once we're engaging in the more day-to-day, once the suicide safety plan has been established, the way we're going to deal with the parts, we do need to try to unblend from the part of us that's trying to control this. Always that part of us that wants to make sure we are activating essentially after the safety plan, that we're activating emergency protocol is always going to be there, right? In the co-pilot seat. If we hear that the person is literally going to go and carry it out and do the thing, then that part is we're going to have to do what we need to do, break confidentiality and all of that stuff. But we want it to be to the side of us, informing what we're doing and what we're hearing, but trying to be present. We're trying to be compassionate and curious about the suicidal part, right? So when a client is expressing hopelessness, a desire not to be alive anymore, a fantasy about ending their life, frame suicidality as a protective part, right? A part of you wants to die instead of you want to die. How do you notice this part of you? How are you aware when this part is activated? Approach this with curiosity. Ask if you can learn more about the part of the client. I'm so curious about this part of you and how it's trying to help you. Can we welcome this part of you into the therapy room to get to know it together? When does this part of you become activated? What else do you notice about this part? Are there colors, shapes, sensations, images, thoughts, emotions that help you notice this part? And this is the befriending part. Now, again, this is IFS protocol stuff. Befriending a suicidal part builds trust and relationship between the client and the part, as well as the therapist on the part. Learn about the part's positive intention. What is this part's job? Like, what is it trying to do for you? What is it protecting you? What is it protecting you from? How long has this part been doing this? What does this part fear? What happened if it stopped being hopeless or fantasizing about not living? All of these are very important questions to know. The fears of this part. Like, what are you afraid? If you weren't here, we eliminated you with a medication or we took you out and you weren't here. What are you afraid would happen to this person if you weren't there to try to help it in this? Explore how the part feels about a job. How does this part feel about what it does for you? Does it like doing this for you? Like telling you you need to die and like that you need to jump and stuff like that? Is there anything else this part would rather be doing if it didn't have to do this? These are a little bit deeper in the befriending process. You know, this is very important. You're not trying to get rid of this part. Although other parts within the client system may want to get rid of suicidal parts. You are the boss of you. I'm not trying to take that away. My goal is not to get rid of this part. I want to get to know this part and possibly help ease any burden this part may be carrying. This is going deeper, right? And appreciation is very important, right? Like, I totally get why you need to do this. I totally understand. That makes a lot of sense why that would be a viable option for you. You're validating that it makes sense to me that this part is trying to soothe your sense of overwhelm and helplessness. You know, is there anything this part needs from you or me? What would make this part feel supported by us? So you're trying to kind of engage in this way that's more compassionate and curious about the suicidal part. Does this make sense, y'all? This will be a much deeper discussion within the framework of IFS and how this actually works in practice. But the essential message I want you to take away is that, at the more basic level, you want to help the person separate from their suicidality. Like, this is not all of them, and there's a part of them that is using this as a protective impulse and response to whatever is going on. Anyways, we are out of time. I will come back to you guys next week, and then we will not need to talk about this for the whole time again. We can start talking about something else. Yay. Any questions? Anybody else have? Okay, if you need
You're gonna send the IFS suicide
Mhm.
model to
Yeah,
us?
I thought I had sent it before, but I'll send it again. Yeah.
I
All right.
didn't see it.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
You too. Bye.